At 16, I fell into the water and was forced into a marriage with the heir of the Duke's estate, becoming the laughingstock of the entire capital. No one believed that it was my stepsister who pushed me into the water, including my husband. Throughout this lifetime as Jiyu Jiawang's wife, I have lived cautiously, burdened by guilt. Even later, he treated me well and granted me the title of a noble lady, but I knew that, deep down, he still resented me. When I woke again, I was back by the Emerald Pond, and my stepsister was up to her old tricks. This time, however, she chose to jump into the water herself. A gentle breeze whispered, and the green waves shimmered as Jiyu Jiawang's small boat glided across the water as scheduled. Hearing a cry for help, he had already rolled up his sleeves and stepped forward with one foot, but just before leaping into the water, his gaze suddenly met mine on the shore. In an instant, the young master Jiyu swayed slightly and drew his foot back. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now the story begins. As the story goes, those with unfulfilled wishes from a past life, burdened by too much resentment, are granted rebirth. I can't understand it. In my previous life, I lived with a pure heart and few desires. Why did heaven decree that I must live it again? It wasn't until I laid eyes on my half-sister before me that everything suddenly became clear. I was brought back by her. Since birth, my sister has been the apple of our parents' eye, and our mother cherishes you like the pupil of her eye. Naturally, you wouldn't understand my suffering. Zhu Jinxin's eyes glistened with tears, yet her expression was one of great joy. But after today, everything will be different. With that, without waiting for my reaction, she leaped into the water. Wait. I rushed to the edge of the shore, reaching out a hand, only to recoil as the pond water chilled me to the bone. This bone-piercing cold, I could never forget it. In my past life, it was also in this early spring of March, when warmth and chill intermingled. Zhu Jinxin pushed me into the pond, and then, I looked up into the distance and indeed saw a small boat emerging from behind the shaded grove. The graceful young man standing tall on the boat was none other than the elegant and distinguished heir of the Duke Dinghua, my former husband, Jiyu Jiawang. Wow, Jiyu Jiawang looks so young. I was lost in a daze, sighing with emotion, but then I saw him raise his arm and roll up his sleeve. Gazing intently at the struggling figure in the water, his brows furrowed deeply. He seemed to be hesitating whether to jump in and save the person. Today's banquet was actually arranged by the Duchess of Dinghua under the pretense of flower viewing as a matchmaking event for him. Jiyu Jiawang, unable to bear the commotion, secretly slipped away to the waterside. Yet, he happened to encounter a noble lady who had fallen into the water. The Jiyu family, the Dukes of Dinghua, had a family rule against taking concubines. If he saved this woman, to preserve her purity, he would have to marry her as his principal wife. In my previous life, that was exactly how I was treated. So, in this life, Jiyu Jiawang is going to become Zhu Jinxin's husband. Like a violently plucked string suddenly snapping, my mind went completely blank. It seemed as if I could feel a scorching gaze. Jiyu Jiawang suddenly turned his face and looked toward the shore. He met my gaze directly and unmistakably. I had no time to dodge, and we stared at each other wide-eyed for quite a while. And then, in an instant, Jiyu Jiawang swayed slightly and drew his foot back again. Although I don't understand why, but I was actually somewhat relieved that Jiyu Jiawang didn't save Zhu Jinxin. Not because I particularly liked him, I just didn't want him to be schemed against again, at the cost of his entire life. In my previous life, I entered the water dressed in white. When Jiyu Jiawang rescued me and brought me ashore, both our clothes were soaked through, and even my undergarments were clearly visible, even though it was on the grounds of his Duke Dinghua's estate. There are no walls in the world that don't let wind through. The next day, rumors spread throughout the capital. They all laughed at me for overestimating myself, the daughter of a mere censor, driven mad by the desire to climb the social ladder. I even resorted to the despicable tactic of a forced marriage, coercing the heir of the Jiyu family to marry me. When my father learned of the rumors, he was so furious that he couldn't eat for days and locked me in the ancestral hall. My half-sister Zhu Jinxin came specifically to mock me with sarcasm. Sister, your luck is truly remarkable. That boat was originally meant for Prince Ji, but somehow it turned out to be the Crown Prince Jiyu. Prince Ji, over 50 years old, is known for his extravagance and debauchery, making noble ladies in the capital avoid him like the plague. Zhu Jinshin had intended for me to be rescued by him, ruining my reputation and forcing me to become his concubine. Even if my sister is the legitimate daughter, the Duke's household would surely look down on someone of our background. Father values reputation so much. I wonder how he will deal with my sister. My face was deathly pale. I had long lost the strength to argue, and in my heart, I had already prepared for the worst. The Zhu family's status may not be as illustrious as the Duke's, but they have served as officials for generations and are known for their integrity. No matter how much my parents love me, they cannot allow me to disgrace the family. Finally, after kneeling for 7 days, my father came to see me. He brought a white silk cord, his voice choked with emotion. Miaoa, regardless of the truth, this is the only way out for the Zhu family and for you. This world is particularly harsh on a woman's chastity. I understood my father's predicament and silently accepted the white silk, yet on the day I was to hang myself, my mother rushed into the dark room and saved me. She wept with joy, saying that the young master Jiyu had come to propose marriage. I am very grateful to Jiyu Jiaowang. In truth, he could have easily ignored my life and death, treating the matter as a mere romantic affair, but not only did he marry me, he also strictly adhered to family rules, having only me as his wife for life. At the beginning of our marriage, Jiyu Jiaowang was very reserved and cold towards me. Less than 3 months later, he requested to leave the capital and head south to suppress bandits, while I, in the Duke's residence, was timid and cautious, treading on thin ice. It wasn't until he returned to the capital to inherit the title, and I became the Duchess, managing the household affairs, that our relationship finally moved past the awkwardness and could barely be considered harmonious. As the saying goes, a day as husband and wife brings 100 days of affection. Jiyu Jiaowang and I muddled through a lifetime as husband and wife. I can't say I had deep feelings for him. If I had to say, it was more guilt and respect. Jiyu Jiaowang is an exceptionally upright and honorable gentleman. I remember on my deathbed in my previous life, he held my hand and said to me, "Jin Miao, you have worked hard. Having you in the Duke's residence is truly a blessing." Alas, he was clearly dragged into my half-sister's scheme against me. He saved my life, protected my innocence, and sacrificed his own marriage prospects. How did it come to this? That he ended up thanking me instead. This makes it impossible for me to face myself even in death. But fortunately, in this life, Jiyu Jiaowang no longer had to be forced to marry anyone. Inside the ancestral hall, Zhu Jinshin knelt on the ground, crying so hard she was about to faint. It was my sister who pushed me into the water. Shina was the victim. "Father, you must believe Shina." Her father, holding his breath, continued to shout in anger, still talking nonsense. "If it weren't for your sister calling the maids to save you in time, the Zhu family's reputation would have been utterly ruined by you. And now you dare to falsely accuse your sister. You are to kneel in the ancestral hall for 7 days, then spend 3 months at the estate in the outskirts to reflect on your actions." With that, he ignored Zhu Jinshin's pleas for mercy, turned and left. I then entered the room, gazing quietly at the figure on the ground. Zhu Jinshin noticed and parted her lips with a cold laugh. "Sister, you needn't rush to come and mock me. If it weren't for your meddling, Lord Jiyu would have saved me and made me his wife." I thought she was beyond redemption and coldly replied, "A forced marriage benefits no one. How is it not beneficial?" Zhu Jinshin looked up, casting a mocking glance at me. "Marrying Lord Jiyu means no concubines to compete for favor. In the future, as the Duchess of Dingwa, I'll be granted an honorary title and enjoy a life of wealth and glory." Before she could finish, I slapped her hard across the face. "What's wrong? Everything is wrong." The undisguised disgust of the noble ladies in the capital, the frivolous teasing of the scions of noble families, the contemptuous and perfunctory attitude of the servants in the mansion, and over the decades, any trace of obscurity in Jiyu Jiaowang's gaze when he looked at me would make me anxious and deeply ashamed. My nightmarish past, in her eyes, was actually something to be so envious of, scrambling for profit like flies and dogs, devoid of shame, with such a malicious heart. "You are unworthy of him." The solemn silence of the ancestral hall made my words ring clearly in her ears. after a brief silence. Zhu Jinshin suddenly lunged at me with fierce intensity, but her legs had long since gone weak from kneeling, and she collapsed to the ground again, looking utterly disheveled. She cursed under her breath. Zhu Jinmiao, why is it that you can do it, but I can't? Don't get too smug. Given another chance, I refuse to believe I still can't surpass you. Do you really think Jiyu Jiaoing truly likes you, a man as cold and arrogant as him? It doesn't matter who he marries. Don't overestimate yourself. She was out of her mind, completely losing control. I pretended not to understand those words. Slowly stepping out of the ancestral hall, I locked the sharp voice behind the door. Yes. It suddenly occurred to me that Zhu Jinshin had always been deeply infatuated with Jiyu Jiaoang. In my past life, it was she who personally pushed me toward the one she loved, and she herself dragged on until nearly 30 before hastily marrying a provincial scholar. No wonder she is so deeply obsessed. Because of Zhu Jinshin's incident, I also need to lay low for a while. My family thus postponed the discussion of my marriage proposal, however, before I could rest for a few days. Someone came to visit our residence, saying they wanted to invite me to the Wangchuan Tower to watch the tide. My mother agreed on my behalf without hesitation. Ning's second son is both handsome and talented, and is completely devoted to you. Will you give it some serious thought? I thought for a long time before I finally recalled who this person was. Ning Erlang, my mother's ideal son-in-law in my previous life, and someone who shared my interests and aspirations. If it weren't for Zhu Jinshin's scheme, perhaps he and I— What are you thinking about? A large hand waved in front of my eyes, interrupting my train of thought. I smiled awkwardly, scrambling for words to say to the man beside her. I never imagined the top floor of Wangchuan Tower would offer such a splendid view. Ning Erlang chuckled. Is this your first time on the top floor? Meower. I froze. Meower. Were we ever that close? As I pondered, I heard him continue. It's a spectacular sight that only comes once a year. Many people rush to book the private rooms here, and I went through quite some effort just to enjoy it with you. Sensing the ambiguity in his words, I quickly changed the subject, pointing to the crowd downstairs and saying, the results are about to be announced. Let's take a look first. Earlier, everyone was joking around while selecting the most handsome man in the capital. Ning Erlang's eyes flickered slightly, and he spoke hesitantly. Sister Miao, do you have a best candidate in mind? I was taken aback once again. In my previous life, I lived to a silver-haired age and had met no fewer than 1,000 people. How could I possibly remember any so-called capital beauties from this time? A stroke of inspiration hit me, so I took a clever shortcut and said, Young Master Ning is quite extraordinary. Upon hearing this, Ning Erlang's cheeks flushed crimson, yet he feigned composure, stammering as he pressed further. How does he compare to the top scholar? Naturally, he surpasses him. I quickly continued, afraid he might notice something amiss, and smiled rather obsequiously, but the smile hadn't lingered for more than a few moments before it froze on my face, because just a few steps away, at the door of the elegant private room, was Jiyu Jiaoang's handsome yet cold face. Ning Erlang also saw him and hurried forward to bow in greeting. How fortunate! When did Lord Jiyu arrive? Would you care to join us for a cup of tea? I was just next door and arrived a bit earlier than Brother Ning. Jiyu Jiaoang glanced at me calmly, his expression and tone both utterly composed. I saw you were having a delightful conversation with the lady and didn't wish to intrude. Ning Erlang waved his hands in embarrassment. Your Highness, please don't tease me. I must first congratulate you on once again earning the title of the most handsome man in the capital, truly well deserved. Jiyu Jiaoang curled a smile at the corner of his mouth, though it didn't reach his eyes. You flatter me, Brother Ning. I'm too common. I dare not accept such praise. He spoke ambiguously, with hidden meanings in his words, yet even a 3-year-old could see that his expression had clearly darkened. The atmosphere grew tense and awkward. I stood aside with my eyes lowered, not even daring to breathe too loudly. It wasn't until Jiyu Jiaoang left that I finally relaxed a little. No, I am still unmarried and have remained pure with everyone. Why should I feel guilty? Even so, I thought. But this heart remained restless until noon, returned to the residence after watching the tide and the opera. As soon as he alighted from the carriage, a servant hurriedly came forward to greet him. Both startled and delighted, he gasped breathlessly and said, Miss, The Duke of Dingwa's residence has come to propose marriage. I learned that the young master of the Gu family had sent someone to propose. The entire household was filled with joy and harmony, except for me. Why? After much thought, I still couldn't resist asking. In this life, I have only met Jiyu Jiaoying twice. We haven't even had a proper conversation. What on earth does he see in me? In the guest hall, the elderly lady from the Marquis's household, who had come to propose, smiled and took my hand. Silly child, naturally it's because you are dignified and virtuous, with a heart as pure as an orchid. The elderly lady said that inviting her to propose the marriage was Jiyu Jiaoyang's own idea. I was worried that this boy, cold as ice, would delay his marriage for a long time. Who would have thought he's the type to act quietly and get things done, ignoring the warning glances from my parents? I pressed on. Did the prince have any other message? Yes, the attendant quickly added. I recognized him as the capable attendant who later served by Jiyu Jiaoyang's side. This man was quite glib-tongued. The young master said that at the flower banquet that day, he saw how calmly you handled the emergency while rescuing others, showing great composure. Earlier, when passing by the bank, he also heard people praising you as highly skilled in bookkeeping and managing accounts, and excellent at household management. Later, while drinking tea with others, they mentioned the monthly charity at the city gates, where the young lady never missed a single time. Truly the foremost compassionate heart in the capital. Moreover, this morning the young master and the young lady met again at Wangchuan Tower. It is indeed a deep bond, as if guided by fate. So that's how it is. Jiyu Jiaoying believed that I had the composure to handle the situation and, as the young master's wife, would be capable of taking charge of major affairs. A capable housekeeper, in the future, can manage the vast duke's mansion well for him and share his burdens. Noble ladies value character. With my good reputation, I add a touch of glory to the duke's mansion. It seems he doesn't necessarily have to choose me. It's just that I happen to meet all the criteria he has for selecting the future duchess. For some reason, I recalled what Yu Jinshin once said. Jiyu Jiaoyang can marry whomever he wants. I have to admit, those words truly became a thorn in my heart. In my past life, out of guilt and shame, I devoted my entire life to the service of the duke's household. Although later wealthy and honored, I always remained humble and never dared to open my heart. Nor did I ever experience the harmony of a loving couple, living in mutual respect and affection. Admiring youth and beauty is a common human sentiment, given a second chance at life. I only wish to find someone who truly loves me, cherish the days when someone cares for and treasures you. Thinking of this, I took a deep breath and resolutely said, "Please, young sir, go back and tell your master, I am not as good as he says, and I fear I may disappoint his kind intentions." At these words, everyone present furrowed their brows and remained silent for a long while. After a long pause, the old madam was the first to speak. "The eldest young lady means," I smiled faintly, nodded, and rose to my feet, making a graceful bow. "Thank you for the elder madam's misplaced affection. Jin Miao will not marry." Dusk was deepening. In the Duke Dingwa's residence, the ornate lanterns were just being lit. Jiyu Jiaoying sat upright by the desk, making a few marks in the book. It matched again. Since his rebirth, he had immediately begun recording every detail of his past experiences. As expected, everything was exactly the same as in his previous life. There is only one. The person who fell into the water at the flower banquet back then was not Yu Jinmiao. Jiyu Jiaoying had always been meticulous and intolerant of mistakes. Even after being reborn, he never intended to change anything, just hoping to follow the routine and have everything go smoothly, without any unexpected complications. But that day, for the first time, he made a choice different from before. He did not jump in to save the person. In the moments he locked eyes with Yu Jinmiao, countless thoughts flashed through Jiyu Jiaoyang's mind. The one that lingered the longest was, is it important that Yu Jinmiao is not his wife? Jiyu Jiaoying had never considered this possibility and was momentarily stumped by his own question. By the time he regained his composure, the person who had fallen into the water had already made it ashore. Somehow, he inexplicably breathed a sigh of relief. That night, he added a line in vermilion ink to the register, "Marries Yu Jinmiao." It was her in the past life. and it must be her in this life as well, otherwise, everything will go off track. Jiyu Zhaoying dared to assert that in the entire capital, no, under the heavens, there is no second mistress of the household as excellent as Zhu Jinmiao. For decades, she has been as steady as a lake, calmly embracing all the complexities and trivialities. Just being near her brings a sense of peace. Jiyu Zhaoying was also certain that the future of the Duke Ding's household would depend on Zhu Jinmiao, but Zhu Jinmiao, however, seemed to think otherwise. In the bustling Wangchuan pavilion, she openly chatted and laughed with a man in an elegant private room. What kind of a sister is Miaoa? What kind of an extraordinary young master is Ning? So nauseatingly sweet, it's simply an insult to decency. Jiyu Zhaoying restrained the urge to clench his fists in anger, went to see her once. And then went to inquire about that Ning II. Does Madame Zhu find him satisfactory? The attendant nodded. Jiyu Zhaoying gritted his teeth and immediately wrote a letter to hand to him. The man was startled. Such an important matter as proposing marriage. Shouldn't the heir discuss it with the Duke and his wife? No need. Jiyu Zhaoying couldn't care about that anymore. If he hesitated any longer, he feared the situation would only get worse. Only by keeping Zhu Jinmiao by his side as soon as possible could he feel at ease. The Zhu family would certainly not refuse such a favorable marriage. None of the elders in my family are rigid traditionalists. Acting first and reporting later would be perfectly acceptable. By the time the attendant returned to the residence, it was nearly dusk. As soon as Jiyu Zhaoying heard footsteps approaching the study, he calmly picked up his brush, ready to destroy that line of vermilion text. However, the report left him stunned for a long time. Perhaps I misheard. Jiyu Zhaoying twitched the corner of his mouth, somewhat unable to believe it. After a moment, he suppressed his smile and said in a deep voice, "Say it again." The attendant looked troubled, gazing at his master's livid face, on the verge of tears. To the heir apparent, he repeated the words again, trembling. "Miss Zhu said, she won't marry you. Both father and mother were rather upset with me. That was a marriage proposal from the Duke of Dinggua's household. They even sent the Lady Dowager of the Marquis household, a first-rank titled noblewoman. How could you refuse without giving any reason? If someone asks about this marriage proposal in the future, how will you explain it? I also regret speaking too quickly." The old lady left with no trace of a smile on her face, clearly harboring resentment in her heart. "But how could I possibly say that I was already married to Jiyu Zhaoying? Whatever, if I can't handle him, can't I at least avoid him?" And truly, there was no way to avoid it. Noble ladies in the capital often engage in Buddhist worship, frequently hosting sacrificial feasts and inviting people to join the festivities every now and then. This time, the invitation from the Wen residence was, as usual, delivered to my home. The Wen and Zhu families have always been on good terms, therefore. Even though I knew full well that I was heading into a den of wolves and tigers, I had to grit my teeth and attend the banquet. Under the eaves of the side hall, a group of unfamiliar young ladies covered their faces and snickered at me. "Look, that's the celestial figure from the Zhu family who turned down the Jiyu heir. I don't see what's so special about her. She reeks of pettiness. Someone like her dares to look down on the Duke of Dinggua's household. Could it be that she overplayed her hand and ended up making a fool of herself? Yes, don't be fooled by her calm expression. She might be dying of regret inside." Faced with their mockery and sarcasm, I simply toyed with the begonia in my hand, paying them no mind. This world has always been unfair to women. Even if I had accepted this marriage proposal, they would still be laughing at me today. Just like now, no matter how I react, I will still be targeted, lost in thought with my head down. Someone suddenly passed by, leaning precisely and unsteadily toward my side. Unable to withstand the force, I nearly stumbled and fell. Though I was unharmed, the crabapple branch in my hand was trampled and broken. I raised my eyes and glared at the woman who was sneering, a surge of anger pressing against my chest. Before leaving home, my mother had specifically reminded me to be cautious with my words and actions, and to avoid arguments with others. But enduring everything in silence would only make others look down on me even more, so I pretended to feel dizzy and leaned against her, using the momentum to push her to the ground. "Oh, sister, since you are so frail, it would be best to return home and rest more, so as not to pass your illness to others. If you don't know what medicine to take, feel free to ask me. You, the woman, flustered and angry, was about to rise and pull me. Suddenly, a low, cold voice came from not far away. Stopping her movement, Miss Zhu, I followed the sound and looked over, gazing at that tall figure standing against the light. I suddenly felt a moment of dizziness. Jiyu Zhaoang was wearing a sapphire blue wide-sleeved robe today. The fabric, the style, the patterns. It was exactly the same as the one I had custom-made for him in my previous life. He had worn it on his 40th birthday, and I couldn't help but praise how good it looked when I saw it. How could it be such a coincidence? Under everyone's gaze, Jiyu Zhaoang walked through the garden and stopped 3 feet away. Lady Wen knows you love crabapple blossoms and specifically sent me to tell you that there are many more planted in the backyard. I understood her meaning. With so many maids and servants in the Wen residence, why would they need to trouble the heir himself to deliver a message? Jiyu Zhaoang came to help me out of this awkward situation. My heart warmed. I lowered my head and bowed to him, ready to express my thanks, but I didn't know if it was because recent events had disturbed my peace of mind, or if that sapphire blue robe was simply too dazzling to the eye. I stared fixedly at the pattern on his robe and blurted out, "Thank you, my husband." Jiyu Zhaoang paused. Fortune never comes in pairs. But misfortune never comes alone. Before the uproar over the rejection of the marriage proposal had even settled, my big mouth had already stirred up another mess. For several nights in a row, I couldn't sleep a wink. That day, did Jiyu Zhaoang actually hear what I said clearly? If he heard clearly, why didn't he ask anything? If he didn't hear clearly, then what does that ambiguous smile on his face mean? And how should we explain the items he recently sent through the old lady of the Marquis's residence? Coral bead strings, white jade guanine pendants, gold-threaded brocade, all were gifts he had given me in my previous life. There was even the jade thumb ring his late grandmother had prepared for his marriage. In our previous life, we had been married for 2 years, and it was only after our relationship had slightly improved that he gave this to me. Now, how could it be given away so casually as if it were an ordinary object? Combined with all the previous events, an unbelievable thought began to sprout in my heart. I dare not think too deeply about it. After staying indoors, beating my chest and stamping my feet for several days, my mother couldn't bear to watch any longer. If you're truly troubled, why not let your father and I decide and arrange a marriage with the Ning family? That way, even if the Duke of Dinggua's mansion holds high authority, they can't just interfere and ruin someone's marriage. I shook my head helplessly, unsure of where to begin. I had no choice but to comfort my mother, and after seeing her off, I retired early for the night. It was early summer, with a sky full of brilliant stars and the chirping of insects filling the air. At midnight, I lay on my bed, tossing and turning restlessly. Suddenly, I noticed a small crack in the window. As the evening breeze stirred, gradually, it outlined a familiar dark silhouette. When I saw it clearly, I was so startled that my throat tightened. I pinched my palms secretly to make sure this wasn't a dream. In the night, Jiyu Zhaoang stood outside the window in a black martial outfit. He blocked most of the moonlight that spilled into the room. He cast aside all etiquette and rules, and as I approached the window, he urgently grabbed my wrist and pulled it to his chest. "Madam, are you truly going to marry that Ning Shuayuan?" Jiyu Zhaoang must have come in a hurry, the chill of the night dew still clinging to him. Fine beads of sweat dotted his forehead, and he was breathing slightly heavily. There was barely a fist's distance between us. Gazing into those ink-black eyes, I suddenly couldn't tell which lifetime I was in. A moment of bewilderment. Jiyu Zhaoang had already regained his composure. Realizing my astonishment, he released his grip, rubbed his temples in frustration, and apologized to me. "I'm sorry, I was too impulsive and scared you." I pondered for a moment, lowered my eyes, and shook my head. "Why do you ask?" Since he called me his wife, the question I had been struggling with for days already had an answer. Jiyu Zhaoang also tacitly avoided mentioning the matter of rebirth and honestly confessed, "I had someone bribe the newly hired maid in your courtyard." I recalled that little girl of about 12 or 13. When my mother came during the day, she had broken a teacup at the door. I suppose it was then that he eavesdropped, thinking I had agreed to my mother's proposal, and spread the wrong message. "Lord Jiyu, mind your words. My marriage has not yet been settled. I stepped back half a step with a startled laugh, putting some distance between us and his presence. If you have no other questions, please leave, Lord. Jin Miao will act as if she never saw you tonight. As soon as the words fell, the man's hoarse voice followed closely, thick with grievance. I do. Ji Jiaoing stared at me deeply, his gaze as if trying to see right through me. Why did you say you won't marry me? That was too direct. It was like a blow to the head, leaving me dizzy and disoriented. Ji Jiaoing gave me no time to recover, blurting out as if he had nothing to lose. Next year, your mother will fall seriously ill and need the cold mountain snow orchid to save her life. Without the in-law relationship, the elders of the clan won't easily provide this medicine. 3 years from now, your father will be wrongly imprisoned, if you are not my wife. Neither my father nor I will have the proper standing to plead his case. The moonlight, like a silk ribbon, illuminates the sparkling eyes of the person before me. He recounted every detail of our past life to me, as if enumerating his family treasures. Finally, he said, and 13 years later, in the outskirts of the capital, you were nearly abducted by bandits. Ji Jiaoing paused, his tone strained. If I am not by your side, how can I protect you? He was so considerate of the past and thoughtful of me, which moved me deeply. I then bowed slightly to show respect and comforted him, saying, Thank you, Your Highness. With Your Highness's reminder, Jin Miao will surely take precautions in advance and avoid danger. But I will not avoid it. Ji Jiaoing pursed his lips, looking somewhat aggrieved. I often clash with my father, and without you to mediate between us, I'm afraid our relationship would only grow worse in this lifetime. Every time I return from the military camp, I struggle to sleep. Without the incense you prepare, I fear I would lie awake all night. And one more thing. After these words, spoken almost like a pout, he pointed to his own shoulder. In a few days, I will head south to suppress the bandits. A bullet will nearly pierce through here, and at that moment, blood will gush out like a fountain. Even after the wound heals, it will often flare up, causing unbearable pain. Without you applying medicine for me night after night, I definitely wouldn't have made it through. I was speechless. In 2 lifetimes, I had never seen Ji Jiaoing act like this. It was utterly unreasonable. But recalling the scene of him lying injured and on the brink of death, I suppressed the ache in my heart, averted my gaze, and tried my best not to waver. What the heir said, anyone else could do it. It doesn't have to be me. But I want you, not anyone else. The night breeze carried his words clearly into my ears, stirring a faint, tickling sensation that burrowed deep into my heart. In a moment, Ji Jiaoing raised his hand as if to grasp something, but then let it drop mid-air. Jin Miao, he suddenly called my name, his voice faintly choked with emotion. Or is it that you truly have feelings for Ning Shuoyuan? This is getting more and more absurd. I sighed helplessly. The heir is probably just used to having me by his side. In my previous life, the heir showed me great kindness. No matter how much I do for you, it is only what I ought to do. There's no need to keep it in mind. But in this life, I clearly intended to decline gracefully. But somehow, looking at Ji Jiaoing's face, I felt an inexplicable urge to confide in him. Jin Miao believes that the debt of gratitude between us has already been settled. In this life, I seek not a destination, but only a heart as pure as jade in a crystal vessel. Having been husband and wife for a lifetime with Ji Jiaoing, we had done even the most intimate things. Yet when I said these words to him, my face still flushed with heat. A heart as pure as jade and ice. Ji Jiaoing murmured my words back to me. After a moment, as if struck by a thought, his expression softened and a smile flickered in his eyes. Before he could continue speaking, a maid's inquiry suddenly came from outside the main door. Miss, are you awake? Hasty footsteps approached urgently. I instinctively pushed against Ji Jiaoing's chest. Hurry and go. Don't let anyone find out. Yet that person continued to laugh, leaning against the window frame. His brows relaxed as he spoke gently. I know what you desire, madam. Jin Miao, wait for me. A gust of wind rushed against her face, and the window closed. A maid promptly approached with a lantern, exclaiming in surprise, Miss, why is your face so flushed? Could it be that you've caught a chill? My heart was pounding like thunder. But I forced myself to stay calm. Nothing, just had a dream. Ji Jiaoing told me to wait, but didn't say for how long. Since that night, He hasn't even shown his face, only sending his attendant over the wall every day to deliver things. It's nothing particularly valuable. Just things I'm accustomed to using. It seemed quite tailored to my preferences. The young master had already prepared the recipe and given it to Wang Chuan Tower to develop, saying the young lady would surely enjoy these pastries. That day, the attendant eagerly presented a plate of Yusin pastries. I glanced over and swallowed hard, my throat dry. I had long known that Jiyu Jiaoing had a good memory, but I never imagined he could recall even the minutest details with such precision that not a single flaw could be found. This jade letter pastry was my favorite treat in my past life. It was something that wouldn't appear until more than a decade later. Yet Jiyu Jiaoing had already had it made in advance. Never let your mouth suffer, no matter what. After days of holding out, I awkwardly accepted this first gift and finally couldn't help but ask, "Why haven't I seen your young master?" The attendant's eyes lit up, and a look of relief spread across his face. "You finally asked, Miss, our young master has gone south, to suppress bandits." He shook his head. "I don't know. The young master only said that if you asked, I should tell you not to worry." A chill ran through my heart. By the time I calculated, the trouble in the south hadn't yet occurred. What exactly was Jiyu Jiaoing planning with this trip? Remembering the injury he once suffered on his shoulder, my heart raced with unease. Unable to find peace, the days passed slowly for over a month, and I gradually grew accustomed to the presence of the longtime attendant. Recently, I've been eagerly looking forward to news from the wall every day, waiting for him to send word about the opera troupe. He said that Jiyu Jiaoing left him a strange booklet that predicts events with uncanny accuracy. The exact date when the troupe would arrive in the capital to perform, and which play they would stage, had been written down months in advance. "Miss, don't you think our young master is like a divine being?" I smiled without answering. This was Jiyu Jiaoing's favorite opera troupe, so he naturally remembered it clearly. In my past life, I also fell in love with watching opera under his influence. But it was too late by then. Many of the earlier plays were no longer performed. Now I must seize the opportunity to watch to my heart's content. I go out almost every day, spending from morning till night at the theater. Feeling utterly carefree and content, seeing that I had regained my spirits, my mother felt relieved and no longer made a deliberate effort to arrange a marriage for me. The only thing that displeased me was that Zhu Jinshin had returned. She had ended her confinement, but resentment still lingered in her heart. "Every time you see me, you can't help but make sarcastic remarks. Today, you stopped me again. Sister, are you really going to watch the opera? I'm afraid your intentions lie elsewhere. Perhaps you want to see someone." "What a pity. Not everything can go as you wish, sister. Otherwise, would there be any room left for your little sister to survive?" I'm used to hearing such words, so I paid little attention and didn't even glance at her. Just arrived at the private room of the opera house. The show hasn't started yet. The attendant came over cheerfully to report, "Miss, my master the young lord has returned. He's on his way here to surprise the young lady in secret. I must take my leave now. Miss, I need to fetch a proper outfit for the young master back at the manor." I shot him a few reproachful glances. Watching him walk away, I couldn't help but smooth down the stray strands of my hair. A strange feeling welled up in my heart. Making time seemed to slow down. After what felt like an eternity, a knock finally came at the door. I hurriedly got up to open the door. But the person who appeared before me was not Jiyu Jiaoing. Instead, it was the drunken and disoriented Prince Jijuan. He looked me up and down, truly a stunning beauty. I looked to my left and right. I see his large, stout figure blocking the door tightly, leaving me no room to escape. "Don't run, don't run." Prince Jijuan steps closer. Behind him, the door slowly closed. Zhu Jinshin stood by the door, giggling softly. "Sister, just relax and enjoy yourself. I'll keep watch for you." Downstairs, the show began with the clamor of gongs and drums, and loud singing, drown out my cries for help completely. When Jiyu Jiaoing rushed into the private room, he saw a man and a woman in a compromising position on the floor. Without hesitation, he drew his sword. With one swift strike, he pierced through Prince Ji's body. Not even a drop of blood splattering. Jin Miao," he called out softly. At a loss, he took off his cloak and was about to cover the disheveled woman with it. But when he saw her face, He suddenly froze in place. At this moment, I peeked out from behind the screen. I whispered softly to Jiyu Zhaoang, whose eyes were bloodshot, "I'm here. After all, I've lived 2 lifetimes. When encountering such a situation, one certainly wouldn't lose composure like a young girl." Prince Naji was already dead drunk. Coupled with his short stature, a random object struck on the back of his head was enough to knock him out. The door outside was locked, and I was afraid he might wake up again, so I hid behind the screen. I explained to Jiyu Zhaoang inside the warm chamber. He took me to a residence under the Duke's estate and insisted that I rest well. I repeatedly declined, but still couldn't persuade him otherwise. Perhaps my stepsister couldn't hear any movement inside, so she came in to check. Just at that moment, that Prince Jijuan woke up and dragged her away. Zhu Jinshin had calculated everything, but she never expected the consequences to fall upon her own head. I lowered my head to sip my tea and stole a glance at Jiyu Zhaoang in front of me. His expression was still terrifyingly gloomy. He has been blaming himself since just now. Zhu Jinshin has been reborn, not become smarter, I said again, opening my lips. Your Highness, I'm really fine. Even if she hadn't come in, I would have found a way to escape. You are not fine, Jiyu Zhaoang insisted. I didn't, after talking for so long. This person still wouldn't listen, and I was getting a bit annoyed. Jiyu Zhaoang remained silent. He stood up, walked over, and half knelt before me. But Zhu Jinmiao, you've been trembling ever since I first saw you. He lowered his gaze, tentatively and slowly, and took my hand. If you are afraid, you can tell me. A moment of silence fell around us. I met his clear, steady gaze. Before I could speak, tears began to fall, not knowing how he saw through my thoughts. I was at a loss for a moment and turned my face away. Please don't say such misleading words, Your Highness. Jiyu Zhaoang's brows softened gently as he wiped the tears from the corner of my eye. Go ahead and misunderstand, because what you thought were misunderstandings were all my true feelings. He scratched my palm with his fingertip, signaling me to look at him. Then, he said word by word, Zhu Jinmiao, my heart delights in you, although the timing isn't quite right. And it may be a bit too late, I must tell you. A moment of stunned silence. Jiyu Zhaoang handed over a few booklets. These were the to-do lists he had recorded at the beginning of his rebirth. I turned the pages one by one. Only then did I realize, it turns out that in the previous life, Jiyu Zhaoang was not as indifferent as I had thought. The itcher with acute issue with Macron and Zeus used to cure my mother's illness. Not all the elders in his clan agreed to provide it. Jiyu Zhaoang took it for me first and reported later. And for this, he was punished with family discipline. Several of the household servants who had always been disrespectful to me were dismissed by Jiyu Zhaoang's hand, while I had always believed they had retired on their own. Moreover, the title of a noblewoman that I was later granted was specifically requested by him, not bestowed by the emperor's will as I had assumed. My gaze swept over the dense lines of text and paused at one particular spot. I couldn't help but laugh and ask, why did you go to Wangchuan Tower to beat someone up on the 13th day of the 12th lunar month in the year of Juchen? Jiyu Zhaogang's eyes flickered slightly as he studied my expression, speaking cautiously. That day in your previous life, when you returned from Wangchuan Tower, you were in a rather foul mood. I asked your maidservant and found out that someone there had brought up the incident of your drowning in the past. I nodded slightly, lost in thought. So, is the heir angry about this? Of course. Jiyu Zhaoang's tone intensified. He seemed unaware of how tightly he was gripping my hand. I know you detest bringing this up. Every time someone mentions it, you get upset for a long while, although I don't know the full story. I understand that the forced marriage wasn't your true intention. I was stunned. So that's what he thought. All those years, I never dared to ask how he truly saw me in his heart. I always assumed he had accepted the situation and married me out of pity. I steadied myself and asked him calmly, do you believe that I was framed, Your Highness? Jiyu Zhaoang's breath hitched, and he let out a low sigh. Jin Miao, I don't want to lie to you, to be honest, at first. I only wanted to ensure your survival, regardless of the truth. It wasn't until we spent more time together that I truly came to understand your character. It's a pity that by then, we had been married for many years, and I didn't know how to bring it up to you again. Jiyu Zhaoang hung his head, recounting the past with visible frustration. As I listened, I gazed at his trembling eyelashes, feeling a faint ache in my heart. So, it wasn't just me who was afraid to open up. Jiyu Zhaoang was the same. The year he married me, he was only 17, having joined the military at a young age. Matters of love and romance were quite unfamiliar to him. Due to the resentment I held over the false accusation that forced our marriage, I always treated him with utmost respect and deference. Bowing and scraping, I never revealed a trace of my true feelings to him. So he naturally assumed that I had closed myself off because I was forced to marry him after my innocence was compromised. He mistook my fear for resistance, and I mistook his caution for disgust. From youthful spouses to hair streaked with white, we were constantly on guard against each other, constantly testing each other. Yet we never realized that from the very beginning, avoiding the misunderstandings that stood between us was destined to drive us further apart. Jin Miao, in the past, I was too foolish to see myself clearly and failed to give you the sense of security you needed. I only thought of how much you've given, feeling a sense of debt in my heart, wanting to make it up to you. Yet I didn't realize that this was care, this was affection. That night, after hearing you speak, I suddenly realized that what you wanted wasn't fame or fortune, but someone who would keep you in their heart. Jiyu Zhaoang's gaze fell on the booklet in my hand, and he smiled self-mockingly. I tell you this today not to claim credit, but to ask for the right to stand by your side. If you think I am unworthy, I will strive again. A white moon was visible at the edge of the sky. The room was dimly lit, only Jiyu Zhaoang's eyes shone like torches. Jiyu Zhaoang did not press for my answer. After that day, he threw himself into handling the case of Prince Ji. Although Prince Ji was a member of the imperial clan, his daily conduct was extremely vile. And he had multiple murder cases hanging over him, long despised by the imperial court and scorned by the officials. There were officials in the Dali temple who were on good terms with the Duke Dinggua's residents. Thus, they conveniently defined Jiyu Zhaoang's actions as a heroic act of righteous courage, requiring only a month's imprisonment. As for Zhu Jinxin, although she was portrayed as a victim in this case, but Jiyu Zhaoang, who knew the inside story, was afraid she would implicate me. So he drugged her on her way to the suburban estate where she was being sent. From then on, she could no longer hold a pen or speak. Jiyu Zhaoang, disgusted by his own disheveled appearance, stubbornly refused to let me visit him in prison. A month later,